Hey there, this is a video explaining my little Express Node server hosting project I've been working on for a couple days now. I mean, I would say this is probably 10 hours plus into it, which is not that much, but it's mostly just kind of frameworking at this point. But I kind of want to do this as a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, I don't even know, video log for myself, and then if anyone's interested in watching, that's why I'm uploading this publicly, so you guys can get ideas from this. It's also on my GitHub, this project, if you wanted to take a look at that. But the project itself, what it does is, it's kind of like YouTube. It's very much like YouTube, in that it allows the uploaded videos, that encodes the video, or compresses it, and then resends that video through an API to the front end, and then allows for random generation in the front end. Obviously, YouTube has an insanely complicated algorithm. I'm not over here making an algorithm or anything. That's not even the point of this project. This project is based off of another project I was doing for work, where a lot of this is incorporated in that in a different way, in a more simpler way. And then I just decided to kind of take it and run with it, maybe do something more complex so that build it out for the future. I'm not over here trying to make an alternative to YouTube. When I show you the front end, you're gonna laugh. You know, you're gonna be like, oh, whoa. I'm not even like I don't even really necessarily enjoy front end coding, but we'll just get to it and you'll see. But we'll take a look at the scripts real quick of this project for the back end. Pre-start just installs packages for front and back, builds the React server, or builds the React front end. Start just starts the server and sets an environmental variable to production, so there's not a bunch of logs. Dev is while I'm working on it, starts Node for the back end, starts the React script for the front end, which is kind of like Node for React. And then travel is if I'm lazy and don't want to, and for some reason want to carry this physically with me on a USB or something, it just gets rid of all the Node packages, so I can carry it. Typically, I'm GitHub pushing and pulling this project between devices and computers that I'm working on, so this is pretty rare to use, but it's there, and that's what scripts are for, to be lazy and let the computer do it for you. So let's jump in to all this. I'll explain some of these dependencies real quick. Bcrypt is for password encryption. There's no authentication on this yet, but there will be, so that will be used. Chalk is just because I like colors in the terminal. Connect history API fallback is for React history routes. Cookie parser. I probably won't be using cookie parser, but it's there. I'll be generating my cookies with JSON web tokens, which I'll explain later. Cores is just cross-origin requests. You just need that so it doesn't freak out when different IPs and domains are accessing different things. Cross-environment is this. It just lets you use scripts to change environmental variables, and this is cross-platform. So Linux, Mac, and Windows, which is great because I build on Windows and I deploy on Linux, so that works great. .environment lets me build my environmental files, which I will not be showing that on camera, and if I do on accident, I will be bleeping that out because there is sensitive information in there. It's probably not anything important in there right now, though. So that just lets me build environmental variables into my projects so I can keep them out of my GitHub so people don't try to hack me. So appreciate that. Thanks, guys. Express HTTP server Node for Node. You probably already know what that is. It's extremely popular. Helmet. Helmet is just secure. It adds security measures to API requests and HTTP requests. JSON Web Token is for generating JSON Web Tokens. There you go. Self-explanatory. If you want to know more, look that one up. Mongoose is the oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the name. It's a model. It's a ORM, an object relational. No, it's an ODM, object document model. I can't remember what it's called. it's just a layer to communicate from Node to MongoDB without having to write in native MongoDB code. Because no one wants to do that. I mean, unless you really want to write. Yeah, no. So Mongoose all the way. When I was starting to write a couple years ago in SQL, I was writing all SQL out manually in. That just sucks. So yeah, no, thank you. Morgan is just so I can see and view HTTP requests that are coming in and out of the server from the front end or anywhere. It kind of lets me debug the server. This is off when it's in production mode. This is on when it's on development mode. And that development, this node environment variable is set to development by default. It's kind of interesting. When I was working with Flask in Django a couple of years ago, which is Python's HTTP servers, which are great, by the way. Flask is super awesome. Django, I mean, it's not that Django goes over my head, but Django goes over my head, and I just never spent the time to really research it. I started with Python as my main coding language, and I really enjoyed it, and then moved away from it because Node.js just kind of like intrigued me, and I really like JavaScript, which I know it sounds like I'm like a heathen on the coding world. Oh, how dare he like JavaScript? He's not a C family Puritan. I just like JavaScript. People complain that it's weird. It is, but I like it. There's a lot to learn, and they're always changing it, which is good. And then if you're a C family Puritan, you could always use TypeScript if you really want. You know, TypeScript's cool and all, but I'm just like, I'm good. So I lost my train of thought. But Morgan, when I was doing Flask kind of has like a Morgan style debugger logger built into it, which I loved because it showed like what IP address or domain was accessing your server and like what they were doing, what the request was. And Node Express doesn't have this built into it. And I was like a plebe and a noob a couple of years ago. I still am, but I was like, what the heck? Why doesn't Express not have that? Like, why can't I see anything? That's kind of critical. I'm like, why do they not have that built in? But Morgan's a great alternative, and I love it. Multer is for parsing form data, multi-part form data from the front end. So when you send a file, it will take all those data chunks and parse it for you. Socket.io is if I want to use socket emitters for front-end and back-end communication through a WebSocket and not through a HTTP API request. Socket is not built into this project, but I've used it in the past on other projects, and I will probably use it here. So what I'll do is I'll reroute the Express server with the socket server, and then I'll pass the socket through the request object through a middleware. So every time there is a HTTP request that's being routed through my routes and then through a controller, which this is a cool layout that I like that I found a couple years ago and I've been using ever since. That request object is just passed through a middleware, or the socket is passed through on the request object. I'll do like that request.io, equals socket or something, and then pass that through as a middleware so that I can use that anywhere in the chain of the API request, which helps a ton because you don't necessarily know where you're going to use it. It's interesting because like APIs you can go online and look up like how to make an API or how to make a CRUD API, right? CRUD, create, remove, update, delete, or destroy. Like it's basic. That's the basics. But like try to look up like how to do WebSockets or like how to integrate WebSockets with an API, or like how to do WebSockets, and it's just all over the place and there's not that much information on it, so you kind of have to do it your own. But I like passing that socket through the request object. UUID, don't really explain that. It just generates unique IDs. Validator is just a custom kind of like a custom middleware function that just allows you to validate incoming data really easily. You can obviously do them all by yourself and make your own custom middleware. It's used for Mongoose middleware, by the way. Whenever data is coming on a model, you can validate that information. So it's like, oh, the password is less than 6 characters, so spit back out that your password needs to be longer, you know. Validator just has a bunch built in, so you don't have to like type out all the functions and make them yourself. And then it uses regular expressions built in so that you don't have to create those yourself, which is sick. Just kind of saves you a bunch of time. And then this is cross scripting. It's a little module that does cross script cleaning. It just cleans APIs request up so that you don't get cross-site attacked. So let's concurrently just lets you run 2 things at the same time. So I can run nodemon and then the front end at the same time, and then nodemon is what I'm using to run the back end. You should probably already know what that is. I'm not going to explain that. So let me npm run dev this server up, and I'll show you what's going on here. So it's starting. It's going to open up the React server. So the main server is running on, the backend's running on 4044. And so if I were to deploy this, I would deploy this with an Nginx server using reverse proxy, and it would just reverse proxy that port out. Obviously this is development, so the front end is proxying that. So yes, this is port 3000, but all API requests are being proxied to 4044, which is super cool, and React's pretty awesome. So you can already see, like if I refresh this, see, it's not going to do it now. Oh, maybe. There we go. I froze it. There we go. Sometimes with PowerShell, if you click somewhere, it'll like freeze the PowerShell, which will freeze your entire program. There's actually a way to like go in preferences and turn that off. I think it's like turning off quick edit mode. I'm pretty sure it's how you do that. But with every refresh, you can see it's making it. This is Morgan showing me this. It's making an API request, HTTP request. It's a GET request to API v1 videos, and it's a GET request to that. And I'll explain what that does. So you can kind of see the front end looks like trash because I haven't really done anything with it, and I'm not really a front end developer. I like doing it, kind of, but I prefer the back end coding. But I'll clean this up obviously, but this is just day 1 of this. I just need functionality at this point, so once functionality is correct, then I'll start cleaning up the front end. So I'll just kind of show you what's going on here. Let's see. Let me open this up here. So if I refresh that, let's see, videos, because that's the GET request that it's making. So I can show you the data here. It's kind of cool. So if I look right here, this is the API request, that the GET request it's making. This is what the server, backend server, is sending back. It's sending when this was creating the database, the file path where this video is located on the server, the title of the video, and then the video ID. And then it has its own ID, which I could make the same, but I'm like, whatever, not that big of a deal. I'm not going to really work with that right now. It's not a big deal for me. So what this does is, without showing any code, when the server loads on just the /root path, it's going to make a request to the server. It's going to ask for this video information here. It's going to return all this data. Then it takes the titles and it's going to map them. It's a array that's being mapped into multiple pieces. It's dynamically allocating, or it's dynamically writing a HTML div or something. I don't remember exactly what I put. It's a div with a bunch of stuff in it though. That's being split around. So if I hit one of these, obviously there's no styling or anything, so that looked like all weird. But you can see this URL has changed, and there's now a video. This video has information on it. All three of these videos are the same, actually. It's a little thing I grabbed from work. It's just fast, so I can do it real quick. So if I hit 3, videos there. Logo just takes me back to the root path. 2, videos there. But if you look, this path is always changing. And if I grab one of these paths, let's just grab random video 1, copy that. It's on the path of watch, question mark, which adds a query, v, which is just the key that I'm using for video, equals, throw that key in there. Now it loads correctly the video. If I remove that and just put a random key in there, obviously that key does not exist in the database, so it's going to give me an error. There was nothing there. That path does not exist, and that's doing nothing. So it's not, and it's sending a 404 because it's not found, which is pretty cool. So let's show on a, and these don't do anything, obviously. There's no searcher profile. That's just there because it's my goal in the future. This upload tab also would go into profile and be cleaned up, and it'd be its own page. This would be like the home page. Imagine YouTube with a home page. So this still needs authentication. Each video would be tagged with the user ID as well. And then I'd use virtualization. I'd use a virtual with Mongoose to determine to tag those together, so that when you were to upload, you can see what videos you uploaded, and it wouldn't show you what someone else uploaded because that's not your content. And that's how that works. Is that's tagged to your user ID, your unique user ID. That video is tagged to it, and then when it loads and you want to see your videos, like inside your profile, you can look up like what I uploaded my videos. They'd be tagged to your ID. Homepage would obviously show everyone's, and it would ignore the user ID because that content is available for everyone, if that's how you want it to run. So let me show what's going on here. So let's look at the server real quick. These are all my imports. First thing in the server is it's going to load all the environmental paths. It's going to connect to the database. It's going to run this. It's going to load the route path, or it's requiring it. It's going to create the server here. Here is the Morgan development. If the variable node environment is development, it's going to run this. If not, then it will not run that. Cookie parser for parsing cookies that are coming in. Body parser is parsing body information that's coming in from the front end. Security is set. Clean up any of those cross-site attacks. Enable cores. Mounting the router here for Express. History mode for React router. And then it's actually serving the React build here once I actually build that. So it's statically serving that. And then the port's listening, or the server's going to listen and create the port and actually start the server. So let's actually manually follow a path here so I can kind of show you what's going on. Okay, so let's look at the front end here. Let's grab home. Okay, so now in the home route, or home component, which, let me show the router actually first. Let's do this. Show you the router. So I got a little router here going on. What this is showing is the nav bar, and it's not behind a route, so it'll always show the nav bar on every page. It's showing the upload on every page, but that'll be removed obviously. Then it's going to have the switch here, which actually routes what's underneath the nav bar. So on the exact path of / is the home page. On the path of / watch is the watch page, and that is sending a query get on the V key. So, and then that'll be handled within the watch route, which I'll show. And then anything that doesn't match these two paths will always be routed back to home. That's just, it's not. I'm not going to throw 404 errors up if there's a weird path or anything like that. If the video is incorrect, it'll show a 404 on the video page. But if you just put a random bunch of characters in here, it's just going to route you back to home, and that's fine. So on the home component, when this component mounts, which is every time this page is loaded, it's going to use this use effect one time. If I remove that, it will run a lot and run on its own. Or I could put it to have it run every 1 second or something like that. That's just a lot of work, and there's no point in doing that. If you really want it to be live, I mean, you could do a socket emitter, where like every time the database pings, video is being uploaded and it's complete, then refresh the home page for everyone. But there's no point in that. You could just refresh the page. There'll be enough content on there. People aren't going to be like, oh, I wonder if someone just uploaded something live now, which is cool, but whatever. So it's going to run this get database function every time this page loads for one time. This get database function is an asynchronous function. It's running an Axios request. Axios is a HTTP. It sends HTTP requests. It's using the fetch API. I like Axios more than fetch. Doesn't really matter. I just started using Axios first, and I just got used to it. And I like the async await functionality with it. That's great. Async await is super clean. It's cleaner than doing promise chains, because that's disgusting. Like the dot then and dot catch and all that stuff. It just gets so confusing. The async await is just so clean. It's amazing. So what it does is it's going to run this function. This function is going to do it has a try catch block. The try is it's going to await this Axio get request to this API call. So I'll show you that in the back end. Make sure I don't accidentally show something bad here. But I'm not supposed to. It's in the controller. So when this mounts, it's going to run this function right here. This function is going to send a GET request, which doesn't need authentication or anything. It's a publicly available route. There's no authentication even set up. So it's going to send that, and it's going to await the return, because this Axios uses the I think the Bluebird promises. It just uses promises, which has a reject and a resolve. If the server sends back an error or nothing, it's going to reject it. If the server sends back a positive HTML code that's not an error code, it will send back that data and resolve that, and then it'll continue with this rest of this function. So once this mounts, sends here, hits the router hits this controller right here. It's going to look into the database, the video database. It's going to find everything. It's going to save that into videos, which is just going to become an array, or an object array. This sends, if it passes, you can find everything. It sends 200 return, and then it sends in a JSON request. Success true, data equals, or data is videos. It sends that in a data object. That's going to send back to the front end. That is now inside this data variable. If it passes, then it's going to set the state, set video state to data, because I don't need that. I just need the actual array that it's sending back. So it saves that into the array right here called video databases. Then I have a function right here that's going to return JSX, which will be rendered down here. So this JSX function takes the video database array, and then it maps. What the map does is it takes every single index iteration of an array, and it does something to it, or you can take the information out of it individually, and that's that first object. So this first object it's whatever the array object, that first set of array object is. Or like the objects in that array, because this is an array of a bunch of objects. So I need to iterate through those objects. The second one is it does give you the index automatically, so if you needed to like determine where the index of that object is, you can use it. Right now I'm not using it. But then it's going to return JSX. It's a div, and I'm using the video ID as the key. That's just for React, so it doesn't get confused where things are at if things get deleted in this object, which they will in the future. And then it's just creating a link object using the React router. A link object is just an A. It's just an anchor tag with an href. And then to what file path I want it to go to. The file path is this /watch on the front end, $v for the V key equals. It takes the video and the video ID, which is that long character. It takes that, plugs it in as a media. It's a query on the URL query, and then it sets the link to that, and then it also says the title right here. So that's what's happening right here. So this is the title, and then the actual aref, the anchor and the href is pointing to this URL right here. That's a lot and really confusing, and I'm sorry. So that's literally what the front page is doing every time I reload. It's going to catch those. And then when I click on one, now we can follow clicking through. Let me bring up the watch page. So this is what happens when you click one of these. It's going to send you to that URL. The watch URL in the router is configured to the watch component. It parses the location, which the location is this of the V key. Remember from the home page, it's going to query. It's going to parse this query here with a V key. So this location object is whatever this is. If the location object exists up here, then it's going to run this. If the location object does not exist, it's going to redirect you to home. And that's what happens if you just get rid of this whole thing. It'll redirect you to home. So then what it does is it's going to send a div, set up a div here with the video. This is the HTML5 video tag using a source. The source is it is an API HTTP call to API v1 videos with an ID of the location, which is this string here. So once you do that, let's jump back to the back end here. Go on controllers, videos. Let me bring up watch. So just imagine you click on the link, right? It's gonna take this. That's the location object here. It says props.location. That's what's in there. Is this long key? It sends a request to there. So now if we go in here, it's just sending a single GET request with the request param of ID. So this is the whole magic object here. So then what it does is it's going to look into the path. It looks for that file. The ID is the same as this. It matches. It plugs that in there. It's looking for the file here with that unique ID, because the IDs are created, and I'll show the creation of the IDs and what that looks like. And that ID is saved in the database and sent to the front end to make a link. So it's like kind of like a big circle that's just routing. This whole thing is going to split it up into pieces and send that. It sets the headers, and then it's going to send this whole thing, then send a pipe. It's a 206, which is partial content. And then if it errors, it's just going to shoot a 404 back, so it doesn't hang. So if the video doesn't exist, it's not going to hang. It's going to send a 404 back. So then I'm going to talk about the uploading process. This is kind of complicated too. If I choose a file, and let's pick that small one. Where is it at? Here we go. Give it a title. Sorry, you can't. It's hard to see. That's black text, but it says title. Give it a title of below. So what it's going to do is it's going to save the video right here. So we'll upload that. It grabbed it. You saw another one pop up here. You saw it happen pretty quick. But it just converted it and also resaved it and saved it with the same name. So if I refresh this, you should see hello there now, which is awesome because it saved it into the database. Made another call of hello, title hello, so you can see that video. So if I click that, it'll open that video, and there's the unique ID for that one. If the video is longer, you would see what happens, but I'm not going to do a longer one. So what's happening here, and the reason I had this open is so you could see the CPU spike, because what happens when you make this call, this is for uploading a video, and let me grab the router too, because there's stuff happening on the router. Okay, so when you upload a video, it's using Multer to save where the video is going to go. It's going to save it in the assets video folder, but using the callback. Then it's going to convert the file name of the video. It's going to use UUID to give it a randomly generated name, and that's how. Excuse me. Let's see here. I'm not sure. Right here. That's how all these randomly names are generated, because that's not the actual name of the video, but it's going to save the title in the model, but it just generates a random name for it, and saves that into the database as well. So then right here, those objects are passed through, and I'm just console logging them so I can see them when they come in. You can actually see it right here too, so you can see what's passing through. Then it runs this custom function that I created called encode, which is a middleware. But let's see, I put it in the utilities folder here. I'm not using it on the route as a middleware, but I'm using it inside the route. If this was used before the route, before it got to this point on the controller, this function, then I'd put it in middleware, but it's used after, so it's more of a utility, but it kind of is a middleware. So what's happening here is I'm using something called FFmpeg, which is a super awesome converting program. It's cross-platform, and you can download that online. It uses terminal commands to run. It's not like a GUI. It doesn't have a GUI or a GUI program. It's all terminal, which is great if you're trying to make a program and you need to use the terminal. So I set this up to return a promise because it already has a callback. The child process execute file already uses a callback and it's built with that, which is right here. So it's perfect to return a promise then, because then I can use async await with it, and then I can wait until the file is completely encoded and done before it's going to send information back or upload that to the database. If it didn't return a promise, then I'd have to put that information here. It's just too much work. So it's easier for me just to do a promise return. And also, like, you don't want information being sent back to the front end if it's not done. You need that information to be sent back if it errors or if it's done. Then that information can be loaded, and then the home page can be refreshed, grab that information from the database, and that video is ready to go. You don't want the video to pop up if it's not ready to go. So that's the point of this. So what happens is the video that you upload is sent in as an input variable, and then these are just static, or they are supposed to be dynamic, but it's static right now. Variables, and you show that right here. Let's see. So there's the four parameters that are being sent in. So it's going to send the file in because remember, Multer saves it right here in the video folder, that file name. So that's going to send it as an input, and then I want it to be pushed to the converted folder. So that's with the same name. So that's the output. That's the resolution. That's the bit rate. It's super small right now just for testing, so it can get done pretty quickly. So I don't have to wait like 50 minutes for a video to encode in like 4K. So it's saving as 720p at 1000 megabytes per second bit rate, which is pretty small and super bad, but it's fine for testing purposes. So there's an await call put in front of that. It's an async function. So once this finishes, if the error is null, if the error is not null, or there's an SD out error, it's going to reject the promise and send that information. If not, it's going to resolve the project and send any login information, which I probably won't use, but it's good to have. So then it resolves the promise. So the whole point is, once the video is uploaded, so I know this is super complicated route. So once the video is uploaded, it saves it here. It takes that video and gives it a random name. It generates a UUID name for it. Then it's going to push this into this. This is going to encode it in the correct format that I want it, and smaller, so that I'm not shooting a ton of bandwidth out of my server here. And this can be adjusted for the future. And you can also run multiple of these in tandem, which is great, or in parallel, so that you can, if you want to encode a 4K 1080p 720 360 at the same time, and then just like how YouTube does, they encode over time, but they try to give you the ones that are done, they try to give it to you quickly, so they give you like the 360p quality video really fast, because the 4K encoding is going to take a long time to do. So that could be something in the future to do, but I'm not going to do that right now. So if this passes, it's going to continue down here. Sure, I can get rid of that call, but that's fine. Then it's going to make a call to the database. So it saves the title in the title. It saves the path of where the video is located, the converted video, and then it saves its video ID as the file name as its ID. So the file name and video ID are the same. Send that information back to the front end, and that's great and good to go. So every time, once that finishes, and this API call makes a call to the database for all the database information, that video is there and ready to go. So that's pretty much it. There's a lot more work to do on this. It looks like garbage right now, and that's fine. It's already pretty complicated to begin with, but I like where it's going, and I've been happy with where it's going. So that was this is the video log 1 of, you could call it my mini YouTube, I guess. Just an express video host. What's cool is a lot of these pieces can be broken out as modules and used for other things, like this FFmpeg. I already have it based in terminal for like if I want to video encode something randomly. FFmpeg is a great program. It's a little bit faster for my testing than Adobe Media Encoder, and I like the results of it a little bit better. And it's really quick. It's a terminal. You don't have to worry about it. And also Adobe programs you have to buy. So this is free. And it's great. You can actually check that out. Just Google search FFmpeg, and then they'll give you download links for Mac, Linux, or Windows. I just, to use it like the way I'm doing it here, you just set it as a environment variable on your actual operating system, which I'm not going to explain, but that's pretty easy to do on any operating system. Just point to where the file path's at, so the terminal can use that. It doesn't have to actually point to it manually. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So, video log 1 of my mini YouTube. Thanks for watching.